Hey guys, it's finally time. I've talked about this for like a month, 2 months, 3 months even. It is the 2017 Game Room Tour, finally up and running. And like I said, this will be part one. Part two will be coming in a couple months. Part two will be the after, this is the before. When we walk in here, you're going to see the entire game collection that I have. Eventually, some of it's going to be over here in the game room that I'm designing right here. And then the rest will be here and it'll be spread out. That way people can play games over here, people can play games over here. It's going to be fucking awesome. So stay tuned, comment in the comments section below. I'm really excited about this Game Room Tour, and there's a lot of exciting things coming to the channel. So let's take a look. Hey guys, this is where the gaming happens, as you can see right here on the TV. I'm in the middle of Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 plus 2.5. This is the new Sony Bravia 4K HD TV that I picked up about a month ago. I've done a little bit of an unboxing video, you guys can check that out. Right over here, this is where the gaming happens when I record. This is the HP Pavilion laptop. We got that in the shot, so that'd be great. Awesome. Right here, Retron 5, this is where the retro gaming happens. Me and McLovin have posted some videos of us playing. I've also finally beaten Ultima Ruins of Virtue. We'll talk about Ultima Ruins of Virtue in the Game Boy section later on. Right over here, PS4 Pro. Obviously had to upgrade to that. This here is the Nintendo Classic Edition. It had been hooked up, but because of all the rearranging and everything else, right now it's not. When the second game room is built, that'll be definitely going into there. Right over here, you got the sound bar to create sound. Some of the games I've been playing, we talked about Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 plus 2.5. I've been beating the hell out of Tekken 7. One thing I don't like about Tekken 7, aside from the very, it's sort of a rip-off as far as the story mode goes. Not the story mode, but the endings of each character, is the fact that to basically unlock every single costume or extra that you want, you need in-game currency. Well, the in-game currency you get from beating certain modes. Well, if you gotta sit there and play arcade mode to rack up all these coins, and there's no ending in arcade mode for each character, why not just have an ending? So therefore, it's like you're actually doing something when completing it, versus sitting there and just beating it and beating it and beating it, and there's nothing except knowing that you're getting coins, whereas at least you have an ending at the end, you can have coins and an ending. And it's actually, you want to work through it. But that's the one gripe I have about this game. Other than that, graphically, it's incredible. And in the meanwhile, while I'm not playing Tekken 7, I've been NBA 2K17 career mode. Already finished one season with the Celtics. I re-signed with them. Right over here, down here, there's a ton of Game Informer magazines and things of that nature. And then there's some extra Game Boy extra complete in box Game Boy games. You got the Retron 5 box and some PSP stuff. Hey guys, right over here, what I wanted to do is, part of my collection, I have certain things that I collect. Some examples would be every chess game that ever came out for every system. Every collection game that came out for every system. Any compilation, if you will. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have a wall of mascots. Now, back in the day, Nintendo and Sega were at each other's throats, okay? Sony was supposed to help Nintendo. We all know about that. You can find it on YouTube, the Sony Super Nintendo, whatever it was called, that actually didn't happen. And then Sony went its own way and created the PlayStation, obviously, back in 1995 in Japan, 96, I think, in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. I always get my dates either a year off or I'm close. But anyway, right here is the wall of mascots. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to collect every game that Mario has ever been in. So when you take a look, and sure enough, a close-up will be coming very soon, you can see, well, wait a minute, why do you have baseball over here for the original Nintendo? Why do you have Alleyway for the Game Boy? Well, one of the things, the reason is because Mario does show up in these games. He shows up in Donkey Kong, as an example. The other game, Tetris, okay, he shows up in when you beat, I think, level 10, high 5, or whatever it was called. Whatever the toughest level in the B game is. But, so for Mario, for Nintendo mascots, we have Mario, we have Kirby, we have Donkey Kong, and we have, I think those are the three main ones. I don't have Zelda, I don't have Metroid, because those are two games I have zero interest in playing. Zelda, I'm not a huge RPG guy. You'll find out about that later on when we get into the Game Boy section, and I'll explain the story behind that. But so for the Nintendo mascots, again, we have Mario, we have Yoshi, that's the fourth guy. Mario, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, and Kirby. Now when we get to the Sega portion of the wall, we also have, obviously, any Sonic game. Sonic was their big mascot when the Genesis came out. And then when we get to the Sony portion of it, we have Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. At the bottom of this shelf, we have some video game books and magazines and things of that nature, like the history of video games. And then Jeremy Parrish on YouTube, he's a huge YouTuber. Go check him out. He's written year by year so far, both Nintendo and Game Boy releases, which I find awesome. So check Jeremy Parrish. Just type in Jeremy Parrish in YouTube. You can check him out. Hey guys, this is the Assassin's Creed section. Again, when the second game room is built, I'll be rearranging everything here, but basically, it's a funny story when I talk about Assassin's Creed. I was in GameStop in Pittsfield one day, and I think this is at the time, or maybe it was J Street Games that just opened up in the mall. No, was it GameStop? Was it J Street Games? I forget which store it was, but I walked in one day, and I happened to see Assassin's Creed just sitting there for like $8 used. And I remember seeing the commercials for Assassin's Creed 2, and I'm like, huh, I wonder what this game's all about. This is back in the day. It definitely wasn't J Street because I was in North Adams at the time. So it was definitely GameStop. So I walk in, it was GameStop in the mall. That's what it was. It was GameStop in the Berkshire Mall, and then they shut down that location, and they left Allendale open again. So it was GameStop. But anyway, we're in the Berkshire Mall. I'm in the Berkshire Mall. I want to say, well, what is this Assassin's Creed all about? Let me tell you something. When I played, I had Assassin's Creed 1 for the Xbox 360. When I played that, I was hooked. It is by far my favorite series of all time. Mortal Kombat is my favorite video game series of all time, fighting-wise and basically overall. But as far as an adventure type of a game, Assassin's Creed, I could talk hours about Assassin's Creed. Obviously, I won't. I could talk hours about Assassin's Creed. But the deal with Assassin's Creed is the lore. And what brings me back every year, and in the comment section below, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. What brings me back to Assassin's Creed is not so much where the games take place. I could care less. I mean, Italy was pretty cool, walking around, seeing stuff like that. But in reality, what brings me back is the lore behind it and the present-day story. I'm not going to throw any spoilers in there. For those of you who haven't played Assassin's Creed, you really need to. It is by far one of the... I can't... Every year I was excited for the new release. Hoping, at this point, now I'm kind of pissed, hoping that the actual story would move on for the present day. And right now, since one of the lead writers after Assassin's Creed 3 left Ubisoft, it really has been stagnant. And hopefully with this year's release of Assassin's Creed, the one that takes place in Egypt, I'm drawing a blank right now what it's called. But Origins, I think it's called Assassin's Creed Origins. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that's the one. But anyway, right over here, as you'll see, we got a ton of Assassin's Creed everything. I have encyclopedias, I have art books, I have comics, I have novels, novelizations of the actual games to every Assassin's Creed game pretty much that's ever come out for every system. Whether it be Nintendo DS, PS Vita, it doesn't matter. I am a gigantic Assassin's Creed fan, and I have some figurines and some hats and some hoodies upstairs. But Assassin's Creed, guys, if you have not played it, you need to play the game. Guys, Dead or Alive, the reason I have, and as we go through this entire windowsill, if you want to call it this where the window is I have games that I love that actually have movies for them. Like, so Assassin's Creed, the movie finally came out. We already know about that. But Dead or Alive, there was a movie. It's right here. It is still sealed. I've already seen it, but it's still sealed. I had to pick it up. But Dead or Alive right here, one of the best fighting games of all time. Mortal Kombat again. I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan, but Dead or Alive is a very close second. The fluidity of the games, the fighting styles, the story's okay, but graphically it is it is one of the best graphical fighters you could ever find. I have every Dead or Alive game that's ever come out, with the exception of Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball 3, which was a Japan-only release. And for those of you who know, my game room is US only. I cannot have a PAL game or a Japanese game, with one exception, and we'll get to that, with two exceptions actually, technically. We'll get to that in a minute. But Dead or Alive, huge fan. PS1, when it came out in arcades, I couldn't wait. And let's call it what it is. The other benefit of Dead or Alive are the bouncing tits. We all know that. The voluptuous bouncing tits. They go bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. We know the drill. All right. So for those of you who are watching this, like, yeah, right, you just like the tits. Yeah, they're cool. But in reality, it is one of the best fighting games I've ever played. I love it. Guys, God of War. What can I say about God of War? It is like a beat 'em up, basically, with weapons, with sick boss battles, with Greek mythology thrown in. It is one of the best game series I've ever played. I'm a huge fan. I can't wait for the God of War reboot to come out this year for the PS4. I think it's coming out at the end of the year. Could be wrong. Last I checked, when he goes into Norse mythology and he actually has a son. Guys, Kratos. I didn't really like God of War 3, but God of War 1 and 2 and the side quests, the side adventures, like Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus for the PSP and PS Vita alike. Great games. If you like adventure, you like beat 'em up, you like games like Double Dragon and Streets of Rage, then you'll love God of War, because it takes that to a whole new level. And again, it's one of the best game series that you could ever play. Guys, Mortal Kombat, here we go. Well, before I get into the story of Mortal Kombat and my experience with it, I did mention in the previous part of this video that I only collect US release games. I do not collect PAL or other foreign country games. I just don't have it in my collection, with the exception of two. One of them being this. I'm just going to pull this out and hold it up to the camera. Well, that obviously sucks. Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2 was released as a dual pack in the United Kingdom. Okay, it was only released in the United Kingdom, but because I'm a Mortal Kombat freak, I have to collect everything Mortal Kombat, so that is one of the games that I obviously had to collect. There was no ifs, ands, and buts about that, and this is one of the Tiger Electronic handhelds that just fell. But let's go back to Mortal Kombat. Let's go back to the actual story of Mortal Kombat, okay? I did not realize what Mortal Kombat was when the first one had come out in arcades, and when it finally got released for the home consoles, the first one, I believe it was 92, if I'm not mistaken. So I was 8 years old, so, what was it, 94? 93? I think it was 93, maybe. Whatever year it was. I remember seeing commercials for it, but really not paying attention. So when I went over to my friend Sam Kestner's house, and I was like, okay, Sam Kestner, you know, he goes, yeah, my brother got Mortal Kombat, you want to play it? I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'm playing it, I'm watching him play it, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't Mortal Kombat. And me and him had the biggest disagreement forever, that it wasn't Mortal Kombat, because in my mind, I thought Mortal Kombat, from what the commercials I saw, I thought it was a beat-em-up. And all this was a one-on-one fighting game. So, in reality, obviously, Sam Kestner was correct, I was wrong. And so, when Mortal Kombat 2 finally came out in arcades, I remember going to Walpole, Massachusetts. I was living in Boston at the time. Mom would bring me up. We'd go to Dream Machine, and we'd go to Papa Gino's for pizza and stuff like that. And I remember seeing Mortal Kombat 2. And to this day, Mortal Kombat 2 is the best Mortal Kombat in the entire series. Here's why. Mortal Kombat 2 had better graphics. It had more secrets. It had unbelievable stage fatalities, a bigger roster of characters. Everything about Mortal Kombat 2, it was darker. It was grittier. It was just, when you saw, when the home consoles came out for when you saw the lightning, okay, come down, and it's dark, and you can see bits and pieces. It would show bits and pieces of the M or the K or whatever, and then finally the lightning struck, and boom, Mortal Kombat 2. You saw it right across the screen. That was when you knew you were playing something special. And guys, to this day, Mortal Kombat 2 was the one Mortal Kombat game that sold me for life. And I have to collect every Mortal Kombat game or thing that's come out. So we have comic books. We have Mortal Kombat trading cards sealed still. We got the Tiger Electronics. I'm missing a few. We got the plug-and-play Mortal Kombat 1. I have VHSs. I have, as you saw, that PAL game. I have every other Gamecom Mortal Kombat. I have everything that you can think of Mortal Kombat. I'm missing a few things out there. But guys, I remember going into the Dedham Mall, back when that was a mall, way back. For those of you guys who grew up in Boston and around the suburbs, you know what the Dedham Mall was, okay? So you remember going into Bradley's, because back in the day, I only had a Game Boy. And so my mom actually got me Mortal Kombat 2 for Game Boy, because that was the only thing I could play it on. I didn't have a Genesis or anything at that time. So I remember going into Bradley's and looking through Electronic Gaming Monthly and Tips and Tricks magazine just to see if I could find any codes that I could input. Because again, that was before the internet, really way before the internet, maybe a year before anybody ever really had a computer at that time. Forget about the internet. But again, huge series. And when Mortal Kombat 3 came out, I was like, okay, well, the music's sick. I love the music of Mortal Kombat 3, but I didn't like the game. I didn't like the run. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the story was stupid. And then Mortal Kombat 4 came out, and it was a disaster. And then finally, when Deadly Alliance came out all those years later, it brought Mortal Kombat back to its roots, and it's gotten better from there. Deception, Mortal Kombat 6, is I think my second favorite Mortal Kombat of all time. Not so much for the actual story in the arcade mode, but the adventure mode. It literally was an RPG of Mortal Kombat in the game itself, which was 40 to 50 hours plus, forgetting about all the other stuff that came with it. So Mortal Kombat Deception, guys, if you haven't played that and you're a Mortal Kombat fan, you really need to. Play the RPG Mortal Kombat mode. It was cool running around seeing pretty much every single character in the Mortal Kombat universe just pop up and start talking. I mean, it was awesome. And guys, Mortal Kombat to this day is my #1 favorite video game series of all time. #1 fighting series of all time. And if you haven't noticed, that's why my YouTube channel has a Mortal Kombat insignia on it. What can I say about Prince of Persia, folks? I didn't really like it at first. I thought it was boring. It's a cult classic. When the Prince of Persia first came out for the PC and then for the Nintendo. Cult classic. Jordan Mechner, you know, everybody loved the game. I personally was like, this kind of sucks. And then Prince of Persia 3D came out for the PC. It was the first attempt to get Prince of Persia into the 3D mold. It was terrible. It was broken. The game was broken. The game didn't really work that well. Controls were awful. And they remastered it for a Dreamcast release called Prince of Persia Arabian Nights. And that was a little bit better. But where Prince of Persia really became a series up in my top 5 is when Ubisoft took over everything and came out with Prince of Persia, the trilogy. So you had Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, Prince of Persia: Warrior Within, which, by the way, the second game in the series is my favorite, and then the Two Thrones finished off the finale of the trilogy. That is a great, great trilogy to play. I recommend it. I also would recommend, a lot of people may not tell you this, but I would also recommend Prince of Persia. Right after the Two Thrones, they came out with a reboot of Prince of Persia. I actually really liked it. I really liked it. A lot of people did not. It went away from the graphical style of the original games. It had nothing to do with the original, not the original games, but the trilogy original games. Nothing to do with it. But I liked the story. I liked the graphics. I thought they were watercolory almost. It was beautiful. And then Prince of Persia came back with the Forgotten Sands to tie into the actual movie Prince of Persia, which, by the way, I'm missing the movie here. But anyway, Prince of Persia, the movie was okay with Jake Gyllenhaal in it. I mean, you know, the long and short of it is Prince of Persia is a series, because of the trilogy, has now found a place right on top of my favorite series of all time wall. Guys, Tekken. Tekken. I remember seeing Tekken in the arcades when Virtua Fighter and Mortal Kombat had been out. It was Namco's answer, really, to all the fighting games that had already come out. But Tekken, what can I say about Tekken? Well, Tekken's a great fighting series. Tekken 3 is still my favorite of all time. Tekken 3 was more fluid. Graphics were unbelievable. It pushed the PS1 to its limits. And the story basically is, you got, Heihachi, who basically threw his son off a cliff to see if he would survive and be able to use the Mishima name, or is worthy of the Mishima name. And Tekken 2 is Kazuya now taking over from Heihachi, who's Kazuya is Heihachi's son. and who he threw off, and Kazuya and him are battling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Jinpachi is Heihachi's father, who Heihachi basically took over the company from and imprisoned him in below the company's headquarters. Okay, and he comes back in Tekken 5, I believe it is. But the long and short of it is, and then basically everything I just said gets thrown out the window, because if you've played Tekken 7 and you've played the story mode, you'll know that basically he didn't throw Kazuya off. Spoiler alert, he didn't throw Kazuya off to see if he was worthy of the Mishima name. He threw Kazuya off because he thought he had the devil in him, which is what his mother had. Jin. So, or Jin. June, was it Junie? I forget her name. Jun, no, that's Jun Kazama, that's Jin's mother. Oh, stupid me. I forget his wife's name, but anyway, you get the drill. Tekken, great series. Can't really say much more than that. Tekken 3, again, graphically is my favorite Tekken of all time because of Tekken Force Mode. Tekken, the amount of fighters that were in Tekken 3. I'm not a real huge fan of the tag tournament games, even though it's basically like a Mortal Kombat trilogy, if you want to call it that, or a Mortal Kombat Armageddon, if you want to call it that, of every Tekken fighter that ever was in every game ever. First one went for the first 3, the second one after the second 3, up until Tekken 6. But it's not, there's no story to Tekken Tag Tournament. It really is just a mishmash of crap, and you get to battle as every Tekken fighter of all time. So that's basically the drill. Tekken, guys, check it out. Tekken 7, I really love it. I think it graphically is unbelievable. I'm not a fan of the story mode endings, which we talked about earlier. Guys, Game Boy. The original Game Boy was my first video game system of all time. I was always a generation behind. When kids had Nintendo and I had Radio Shack, electronic handheld games. When kids had Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, I finally got a Game Boy. I'll never forget it. It was for my birthday, my 10th birthday. I finally got a Game Boy. At that time, or maybe it was my 8th birthday, I forget which. I think it was my 8th birthday. I finally got a Game Boy. It was the happiest day of my life. And Tetris came with it. And it's an interesting story. So, what can I say about Game Boy? Well, so, my mom at the time, obviously single parent, she didn't really have a lot of money, but she was able to procure me a Game Boy for my 8th birthday. And she said, listen, it comes with Tetris. You're going to have to play that for a while because I really don't have enough money to buy any other games. So it was Tetris, and that's what it was. It was Tetris, Tetris, Tetris. I remember saying to my mom one day, I said, well, Mom, what happens if I find a game for like 10 bucks? 10 bucks. She goes, it won't happen. But if it did, it won't happen. But if it did, well, then I'll give you, I'll buy it for you if you find one for 10 bucks. So sure enough, at the Dedham Mall, going to Bradley. She's shopping for God knows what. I go right to the electronics section. I'm looking at all the games. I'm looking at all the prices. And there's a game, $9.99. I could not believe it. I ran across the mall to Woolworths, back when Woolworths was in the Dedham Mall. I ran to Woolworths and I said, Mom, there's a game, it's 10 bucks, it's 10 bucks. She goes, no, you probably saw something wrong, I said, you don't understand, it's $10, I found it. So she's like, all right, fine, but if it's not, I'm going to be very pissed. So sure enough, she walks with me the whole way back to Bradley's, other end of the mall. And there it is. It's Boxel, $9.99 game, puzzle game, and it was okay. I was pissed though. It was $9.99. I was pissed. No, it wasn't Boxel. Correction, it was Daedalian Opus. That's what it was. Because I was thinking to myself, like, Boxel was okay. Why did I hate it? I didn't hate it. It was Daedalian Opus. Daedalian Opus was the first Game Boy game I ever got, aside from Tetris. It came as a pack-in. It was $9.99 by Vic Tokai. And game sucked. It literally, you had a ton of, you had a blank screen, and you had all these puzzle pieces, and you had to fit the puzzle pieces in. And you'd think, oh, well, that's kind of easy. No, it literally was impossible as you got to the later levels. It sucked. It sucked. But that's why it was $9.99. I never complained to my mom and said this sucks, because then I knew she would never buy me a game ever again, no matter what the price was, because she'd fear that it was sucks and she'd throw her money away, so I kept quiet. But that was the first game I ever got, Daedalian Opus. What can I say about Game Boy? It went with me everywhere. I played the shit out of my Game Boy. I had a million games for Game Boy. A lot less than what you see here. So let's go back into RPGs. I talked about why I hate RPGs. Well, there's a game called Ultima Ruins of Virtue. If you've seen my gameplay video, you'll see that I finally beat it. But back in the day, I remember being at the Walpole Mall, this time in Woolworths, the Walpole Mall, and Ultima was like 20 bucks brand new, and I begged my mom to get it, and her and my grandmother went halves and got it for me. Her and my grandmother, not her grandmother, her and my grandmother went halves and got it for me. So Ultima Ruins of Virtue, so what's going on with Ultima? Well, here's the deal with Ultima. You had to find, I think, 7 or 8 ruins, I forget, I think it's 8. I found 7 of them. Did not find the 8th. This is before the internet, this is before strategy guides, this is before everything. So I have no health, no power, no money, I can't do anything, and I called Nintendo Power. And I was like, okay, well, I'm praying to God, I know this is going to cost money, I'm praying to God they can just give me the answer in like 5 minutes and I'll hang up and it'll be what it is, I'll get green, but whatever. Not only was it like a $100 phone bill my mom almost buried me over, okay, but they gave me an answer that I knew on the phone was a lie, but I couldn't argue with them because I knew it would cost even more money for me to argue with them, so I just hung up the phone. I did what they told me to do. It never worked. Obviously, it wasn't what was going on because 20 years later, 30 years, or 20-some years later, okay, or at this point, 23 years later, all right, I finally beat the game, and I know what I had to do because I read the strategy guide on how to do it. I was able to finally do it. So Ultima Ruins of Virtue, I said to myself back then, if this is how RPGs are going to be, I'm never going to play an RPG ever again. And I stuck to that. I never played RPGs, and finally, when the PS2 came out, or the PS2 was already out, Kingdom Hearts came out, I made an exception, and I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts fan, but we'll get to that in a later section. But as you see here, I have a ton of Game Boy games, a ton of Game Boy Advance games, a ton of Nintendo DS games, a ton of Game Boy Color games, and then a couple of 3DS, but how I collect for these is this. Any Game Boy game I can find complete in box, I will collect if it's in reasonable cost. If it's $50, forget it. If it's 20, 25 bucks or less, I will buy it if I don't need it for my collection. Like, for example, Championship Pool, I think I bought sealed for 18 bucks. I grabbed it. Do I need it for my collection? No. Because my collection is pretty much every Game Boy game I had as a kid, and then any game that is a sports title. Any Info Genius game pack, like a Spanish translator, English translator, that type of stuff. Any puzzle game, any Tetris type game, any mascot game. That's why you may see Spot from 7-Up, okay? Or, I'll give you another example. There's M&M kart racing and things like that for the Game Boy Advance. Those are the games I collect. Any game board game, like Monopoly, like chess, like Chess Master, as an example, or checkers if there was one. So any sports title, any game I can get for the original Game Boy, $25 or less that I don't need for my collection, I also buy, and then anything that on my list of things that I collect for. So that is my story with Game Boy. And then finally, when the N64 came out, I moved to a Genesis. I was so happy. I got a Genesis back then. I begged for an N64. My mom definitely couldn't afford it. My dad definitely couldn't afford it. But we found in KB Toys a brand new Genesis for $100. We'll talk about Genesis when we get to that section. But folks, that's basically the history of Game Boy and me, and all the other stuff that I've collected. Guys, as you see here, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, I never had these as a kid. And as I'm collecting games now, I figured now would be high time to start collecting for these systems. It's fucking expensive to find complete in box. If you take a look at my collection, if all this stuff was not complete in box, if it was just loose carts, I'd already be done by now. With the money I spent over the years, I probably would have every game for every system if it was loose. Even some of the rare ones. Rare ones, like, you know, it's a rare one for the Nintendo, I forget. I forget, there's one up there, it's like $1,000 or something like that. I forget which one it is. But what do I have to say about Nintendo? The only experience I had playing Nintendo was over my friend Lauren's house. When we were in the summertime, I would stay at my grandparents' house, and live literally down the street from me in West Roxbury, and I'd go after camp. I'd go to her house and play Nintendo until my mom picked me up. So that's where I had some Prince of Persia experiences. Obviously Mario, obviously Duck Hunt, things of that nature. But went over to my friend Mike Beckman's house. Mike Beckman had a Nintendo, and him and his brother would play all the time. And I remember playing a baseball game. I think I got annihilated. I forget what baseball game it was. I want to say it was Bases Loaded. I could be wrong. But anyway, this is what I have for Nintendo. Again, what am I collecting? Any Sesame Street type game. Same thing with the Game Boy. Same thing with the Game Boy Color. I forgot to mention Sesame Street. Any sports game. Gauntlet is a huge series I'm a fan of. Any game show game like Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune, that's going to be in there. Any Ultima game. Ironic I should collect Ultima. Well, the only reason I'm collecting Ultima is since I beat Ultima Runes of Virtue. I know there are a ton more Ultima games, and I want to, at some point, play those when I have time. But they are on the back burner. Like, I have a ton of crap I'm still playing now, like Tekken 7, like I mentioned. And also, when South Park comes out later this year and Assassin's Creed comes out later this year, I'll be playing all of those. And the new God of War. So, you have Nintendo, you have Super Nintendo. If I'm going to collect for Nintendo, I'm going to collect for Super Nintendo. The same rules apply for Super Nintendo as well. But at Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, this is where I draw the line on a couple of things. For the original Game Boy and for the original Nintendo, I would collect every sports game ever, because back then, very, very few games had either the Major League Baseball or NBA license to be able to have the team names, or they had the team names, but they didn't have the player names, or they had neither of them. So in my head, it's okay to collect those sports games. But as we got to the 16-bit era, licenses were a lot easier to come by. So if a game doesn't have a license, like Magic Johnson's Fast Break is an example, I don't think has a license, I'm not going to collect that game. But Super Play Action Football, that's one game that I'm making an exception for, because I have Play Action Football for the Game Boy. It was my first foray into Nintendo football. I had Play Action Football for the Game Boy. I loved it. I also have it for the original Nintendo, I think, right over here. So, of course, I'm going to pick up the Super Play Action Football. Nintendo's answer, I believe, is basically Tecmo Bowl, is what it was. Over here, you have some Game Boy Advance video stuff that I'm collecting. Wii, I never had. My mom and sister did, I found out years ago. I actually had a Wii. My mom liked the Wii Tennis. It's something I never knew about my mom. And then N64. Huge thing with N64 was I traded in my Saturn way back in the day when I was working at Funko Land in the Dedham Mall. I want to say around 96 when Nintendo 64 came out. I traded in my Saturn like 20 games and picked up an N64 and All-Star Baseball. When I saw All-Star Baseball for the first time, graphically, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It was, and to this day, the graphics stand up. They stand up. To this day. All-Star Baseball, when I first saw that, I said, fuck my Saturn. I have to get an N64. And so I did. I picked up, I think, Mario and All-Star Baseball, I think, were my first two games. And obviously I talked about wanting an N64, but only had a Genesis at the time. Years later, when N64 had already been out, and I had a ton of experience with my friend Yossi, we used to have sleepovers all the time. Me and a bunch of my friends from school would go over his house, and we'd play GoldenEye until 3 in the morning. But finally, when I was older, I was able to get an N64 myself when I was entering high school. Finally. And then the Wii, obviously, we talked about that. So other games that I collect for, that I'm able to collect for these systems, any gambling games as well, any card games as well. As we go through this game room tour, you're going to see a lot more. I'm going to talk about a lot more things that I actually collect for as it comes to me, because I'm doing this on a whim, obviously. But basically, for example, games like, I'm looking at it right here, Vegas Stakes. Okay, it's a gambling game. Super Caesar's Palace is a gambling game. I have a Solitaire Fun Pack for the original Game Boy. So any card game, any gambling video game as well, that is also going to be in the collection. But as you see here, the Nintendo 64, missing a few games, but I should be able to collect those pretty easily. Guys, what can I say about the Sony PlayStation? I talked earlier about how the Saturn, I saw the writing on the wall. I knew by reading Game Informer magazine, they had talked about how Saturn development was dying down. A lot of companies were not going to release games for it. So at that point, I said, okay, well, I have a decision to make. And I was almost traded for a PS1, but then I saw All-Star Baseball 99, or was it 98? It was All-Star Baseball 99 is what it was. And this came out in 1998, so that's what it was. I was 14 at the time. And I said, okay, well, I've amassed a Saturn. I had a job when I was 14. I was working at Arby's right there on Providence Highway there, going into Dedham, and it's technically West Roxbury, but I was working at Arby's as many hours as I could get after school, after high school. And so I chose an N64 based on that graphical baseball game. Well, a couple of years later, I saw the writing on the wall for the N64. A lot of games were being released for the PlayStation. A lot of games that were influential titles. Some I didn't play, like Final Fantasy VII, because again, at the time, I had no interest in RPGs. Still really don't. Kingdom Hearts is an exception. But sports titles like MLB from Sony and Triple Play from EA, and yeah, they had Triple Play 2000 for the N64, but that was the only baseball game released from EA for the N64. Grand Theft Auto, games like Jet Moto, games like Crash Bandicoot. I could talk about the PlayStation all day long. Parappa the Rapper, Castlevania. PS1 is my second favorite console of all time, the first being my Game Boy, my original Game Boy. To this day, will be my favorite console of all time, with all the memories and nostalgia I have with that system. And like I talked about earlier, I beat my Game Boy to death. I mean, I literally had probably 10 years out of my original Game Boy. That's how. And then when Game Boy, the color Game Boys came out, not Game Boy Color, but the black and white Game Boys with the color Play It Loud editions, I got one of those. It was a green one or a yellow. I think it was a yellow one. My sister got I don't know what my sister got. I think we got 2 yellows. But anyway, the PS1, what can I say? I mean, Game Day, NFL Game Day, Madden was huge. It went from being an afterthought on the 16-bit era to a gigantic series on the PlayStation console. Game Day gave it its run for its money. Game Day 98 to this day is the best 16-bit football video game I've ever played. I didn't like the Maddens, and then after Game Day 98, it all went to hell. Game Day 99 was a mess. 2000 was a mess. 2001 was a mess. and then they shut it down for a little while. But again, PlayStation, I probably have close to 300 PlayStation 1 games here. I could be wrong, could be off a little bit, because I have some PlayStation games over in other areas as well, which we'll get to in a moment. But PlayStation, man, what can I talk? Gran Turismo. I mean, just looking through some of these things, I'm forgetting some off the top of my head. Hot Shots Golf was huge. Final Fantasy, we talked about that earlier. Metal Gear Solid, Medieval. Guys, if you want a nice hack and slash game, pick up Medieval and Medieval 2. Ninja Shadow of Darkness from Eidos. Ninja Shadow of Darkness is one hell of a game. Typhoon is a great beat 'em up. Great game. Running Wild from 989 Studios. That's a great game. I mean, we got a ton of stuff here. We also have the NHL series from EA, the Shootout series from Sony. All the wrestling games like WWF Warzone. I mean, the list goes on and on. Folks, play Siphon Filter. We talked about Skull Monkeys. You guys want a rare PS1 game that's out of nowhere? The people who did Wallace and Gromit, those same people did Skull Monkeys. Guys, you got to check Skull Monkeys out. It is a crazy, 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 crazy awesome game. Check out Skull Monkeys. It's an action platformer. I mean, what else can I say about the PlayStation? There's so many memories that I have. Street Fighter, obviously. Mortal Kombat. I mean, there's so many. In the Hunt is a great Metal Slug kind of a game. I mean, there's so many memories that I have with PlayStation. And again, second favorite console. Guys, one of the games I forgot to mention in the PlayStation, Resident Evil first came out. Silent Hill came out. I mean, like I said, the original PlayStation was one of the biggest consoles of all time, the most successful console of all time. Then came the PlayStation 2. And everything that Sony did with the PlayStation 1, they built it even better with the PlayStation 2. I think the PlayStation 2 this day is the fastest selling, not the fastest selling console of all time, but the most selling console of all time. Most systems sold. PlayStation 2, although had a ton more games than the PS1 did, it's a close second, but it's a third for me in the hierarchy of systems. I beat the shit out of my PlayStation 2. And I actually didn't beat the shit out of it, but I fucking played this thing to death. What can I talk about on the PlayStation 2? Well, we can talk about the advanced graphics. We can talk about the unbelievable MLB The Show series that started really on the PS2. Sure, you had MLB Pennant Race and the MLB series on the PS1. But Sony's baseball game, and to this day, it still carries one of the best baseball games of all time, series-wise. But Madden got better. You had a ton of compilations. You had Midway Arcade's greatest hits. You had a ton more Metal Gear Solids. Grand Theft Auto really became what it was on the PS2 because you had Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto 3 is really where it started going to 3D mode. You had a ton of fighting games like Mortal Kombat. We talked about Deception. We talked about Armageddon. You had Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero finally came out, and that was gigantic back then. You had a ton of like NBA Jam type games like MLB Slugfest. What else can I say about the PS2? PS2. For me, I mean, you know, Mega Man X Collection, a lot of people love the PS2 because of the RPGs that came out. Like I said, not a huge RPG guy, never was, based on Ultima, made an exception. Kingdom Hearts, speaking of which, Kingdom Hearts, released on the PS2, both 1 and 2. Also every Kingdom Hearts game of all time, even the ones for the Nintendo DS and all that other stuff. Even the mobile game for like the Verizon, whatever Verizon Cast or whatever that was back like 10 years ago. Okay, but Zcast, I think it was called. Guys, the PS2, I mean, what else? You had NFL Blitz, you had the Pac-Man World Series, you had Yakuza, You had games like SNK Arcade Collection, Virtua Fighter, Triple Play, Tenchu came out. Tenchu actually was released on the PS1 originally. Forgot Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur, yeah, you had Soul Blade on the PS1, but Soul Calibur really, and the Dreamcast. But Soul Calibur series was huge on the PS2. I mean, the PS2 did everything. You had Hitman. Okay, we talked about Grand Theft Auto. We talked about Tekken. I mean, Resident Evil. Siphon Filter still. I mean, guys, Gran Turismo, PS2 was basically the PS1 times 2. And although it had a ton more games, I still think the PS1, in my opinion, to me, is my favorite. It's my second favorite of all time, but still a little bit better than PS2 because at the time, Sega was struggling with the Saturn. N64 was too expensive. And then Sony comes out and just annihilates everybody. It was literally an annihilation. Sony comes out with Crash Bandicoot and everything else, and all these RPGs, and Square goes right to Sony, leaving Nintendo in the dust, and Sony took the market by storm. And with the PlayStation 2, they made it even bigger. Guys, PS3, PSP, I mean, what can I say about the PSP? Nintendo had a hold of the handheld market. Sega had failed with its Game Gear, obviously, way back in the day, and really that was it. Atari had failed with its Lynx. Neo Geo did okay really did okay in Japan with its Pocket and Pocket Color. But Sony wanted in on it, and so Sony basically had a PSP. And one of the cool things, I believe, about the PSP was that in certain sports games, you could actually save your progress to the cloud and then play the same, if you had the same game for that system. You'd then, like, for example, MLB The Show on the PS2, you'd save it to the cloud, and then you could then go with your PSP and actually start playing it. Or that was either the PSP or the PS Vita. I apologize if I got that mixed up. But one of them. But what the PSP did was gaming on the go. You know, that's what it was. Didn't really catch on, though. It didn't really catch on because the problem was a lot of people don't want to play massive A titles on a small console. They're going to play like a God of War or a Mortal Kombat or a Assassin's Creed or a Final Fantasy. They don't really want to play a massive game like that on the go on a small screen. They really don't want to do that. So it didn't really take off that well. But a lot of ports from the PS2 went right to the PSP. I have a ton of sports games, obviously, for the PSP, because I'm collecting every sports game that ever came out for those systems. But what can I say about the PSP? You had Virtua Tennis on there. You had a couple of exclusive Siphon filters on there until it got released on the PS2. You had, ports like the Sega Genesis Collection, huge game. Parappa the Rapper, the first one got ported to the PSP. So, I mean, for what it was, it did okay. It never caught on, unfortunately, because of the Metal Slug anthologies on the PSP, a couple of Metal Gear Solid games. But in reality, it just never caught on because nobody really wanted to play AAA games on the go. Alright, PS3. So here's the thing about the PS3, folks. Xbox 360 had come out way before the PS3 had. because of that, I bought an Xbox 360. I wanted the next-gen console. PS2 was dying down, sort of. I mean, it's still, for the 2-year, I think there's a 2-year difference or a 1.5 year difference between the Xbox 360 release and the PS3. But even when the PS3 came out, the shit was $700. It was close. It was either $600 or $700, and that doomed it from the start, in the beginning. And Microsoft then took a healthy chunk of the console war at that time. And really, that's really where it began. The second, I want to call it the second console war, because the first console war took place between Sega and Nintendo, the battle of the 16-bit systems. And then the second console war is when Xbox 360, Microsoft's answer to the PS2 and PS, at that point, it was the answer to the PS2, PS3 came out obviously a year and a half later. But what can I say about the PS3? Graphically, it was much improved over the PS2. It was huge. The system had releases for almost 10 years. I mean, great system. Horrible price point at the beginning, but Sony fixed that, ready to ship, and then Sony came back with a vengeance towards the second half of that generation cycle and brought us games like the NBA 2K series from 2K Sports. MLB The Show came on there, obviously the NCAA football series, NFL 4. You had more Metal Gear Solid games, Soul Calibur, Ninja Gaiden, Tecmo came in with those. PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale, there's Sony's answer to Nintendo's Super Smash Brothers and stuff like that. Yakuza, Zone of the Enders, I mean, classic games from the PS3. Devil May Cry, forgetting about Devil May Cry, Angry Birds, Grand Theft Auto, Liberty City, and Grand Theft Auto 4, more Gran Turismo. Heavy Rain was a great game. So, there are, again, a ton of PS3 games out there. Graphically, it was much better than the first two. The games, however, I thought were a little bit less than what the PS2 and PS1 offered as far as new IPs. The continued Assassin's Creed, obviously, at this point, had come out to the Xbox 360 and everything else. So, again, guys, this PS3, I don't really have a ton of games for it. One of the two reasons is because how I collect and how I determine what I collect is I look at the game list on this app. You can buy it for the iOS called puregaming.org. And basically what you're doing in puregaming.org is they give you a ton of systems. They give you every game that was ever released for that system. And then based on that list, I can say, okay, this is what I need, this is what I don't need. Now, obviously, I haven't done that for the PS3 yet. One, because the amount of games are astronomical. And two, the system literally, maybe 6 months ago, finally had released a stop for it. So actually, I lied. Cars 3 just came out for the PS3 supposedly. So I know it came out for the PS4, I picked it up for that, but it actually got a release on the PS3 and the Xbox 360. So there are still some games being released for these systems, even though we're going almost 12 years now, right? 10, 12 years, 2006, 11 years. So guys, PS3, what can I say about it? It is what it is. Xbox 360, and the Sega Master System. Never had a Sega Master System, obviously, as a kid, because I didn't even have a Genesis as a kid. Not a lot of people in America had a Sega Master System when they were a kid, because nobody knew what the fuck Sega was back then. But I am collecting for Sega's 8-bit console. Ton of ports. The interesting thing, normally you get a port from a worse console to a better console. In this case, Sega ported a lot of its games from the Genesis back to the Sega Master System, which I found very interesting. But you can see PS4, I love the system. I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. Graphically, it's great. PS4 Pro, obviously. Metal Gear Gear Solid, huge influential game, still coming out. Destiny came out on the PS4. Games like Uncharted came out, things of that nature. Obviously, the sports titles are back. I have the PS Vita small collection. Again, don't really have a complete list of PS Vita games, so I have no idea what I need to collect for it. Original Xbox. The only reason I actually had an original Xbox when I bought one I first went out to college. Because back then it was Xbox and it was PS2. And the thing about it was, I remember telling my roommate who I'd never met, who had called me and said, hey, you know, I'm going to be your roommate. You know, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any video game systems you're going to bring? I wasn't going to say no because I didn't have one. So I went out and went to Circuit City at the time and bought a brand new Xbox and a couple of games. He ended up bringing his Xbox because he thought I was lying over the phone, which I was. So, but I ended up bringing it down. So I didn't really have a lot of games for the Xbox because I immediately got a PS2 because PS2 compared to the Xbox, there was no comparison. Xbox graphically, Xbox was a more powerful system than the Sony PlayStation 2, but the amount of games that came out for the PS2 were just, it wasn't even close. So some of the exclusive games I have for the Xbox that I collected, there's Chessmaster was exclusive for the Xbox, Crazy Taxi 3 was exclusive, House of the Dead 3 was exclusive, all the sports titles Microsoft made, like the NFL Fever series and the MLB series and the NHL Rival series, and then Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden Black were exclusives before they got ported over to the Sony system. And I have Shenmue 2. That was one of the only reasons I actually kept my Xbox, was because of Shenmue 2. Shenmue came out on the original Dreamcast. I remember, and my mom really didn't pay attention to video games, but I remember playing Shenmue on the Dreamcast when I was living at home. And my mom would actually watch me play that. It's a game that she actually got intrigued with. But we'll talk about that when we get to the Dreamcast section later on, the Sega section. But Shenmue 2 was an exclusive to the Xbox. Came out in the Dreamcast in Japan. And then, obviously, we have Tecmo Classic Arcade. Toe Jam and Earl 3 was an exclusive. And then the Xbox 360, like I said, I bought that way before the PS2. I had a couple of games for it, but not really a lot because, excuse me, with the PS3. A couple of games for it, but then when the PS3 came out, I started buying a ton of stuff because I needed to buy the Sony baseball game that was exclusive at that time only to the PlayStation. The really only baseball game. Microsoft didn't have one because they didn't make one after the Rivals sucked, and they concentrated on other stuff. So Sony pretty much made the only baseball game you could buy because at that time they were in a battle. 2K was in a battle with EA over third-party publishing, and Sony was still allowed to make baseball games because they were a first-party publisher. To this day, it's still the same case. So Tenchu Z was, I think, an Xbox 360 exclusive. I also picked up Soul Calibur 4. The 3 Burger King games, you'll hear that during the video at some point. That's one of my Radio Shack alarms going off. One of the first Radio Shack handhelds I ever had. But Soul Calibur 4, and then you have the 3 Burger King exclusive games. Snake King, you had Pocket Bike Racers, and then there was one other one. It was Big Bumpin'. So those are the 3 exclusive Burger King games that only came out for the Xbox 360. Microsoft had a marketing with Burger King. So that's pretty much that. PS4, PS Vita, Xbox 360, and Master System. Guys, this is my Sega wall. What can I say about the Sega Genesis? It was the second system I had of all time, first being Game Boy. Man, did I loved my Sega Genesis. I loved it. And it's funny because people will either say that they're a Nintendo fanboy or a Sega fanboy. And although Game Boy was my favorite system of all time, and it was made by Nintendo, Sega has got to be... It's got to be... I said earlier PS1 was my second favorite console. It still is, but Sega's literally 2A and 2B. Sega's 2B. I mean, what can I... Jeez. There's so many classics on the Sega Genesis. Games like Contra Hardcore, Double Dragon 5, all the Sonic games. I remember walking into the Bradleys in the dead of mall and not having a second generation system yet, only having a Nintendo, or only having Game Boy. But Super Nintendo and Sega was out, and seeing Sonic and playing Sonic while my mom shopped, because they had the displays out that you could actually play the games. I mean, Sonic. NBA Live really made its entrance on the Genesis. All the sports titles made its entrance. Like Madden first came out for the Genesis. I mean, what with the original Madden football? Then you had like companies like Alcalade who are still out there making baseball games like Hardball. What else can I talk about? The Sega Sports Series, Deion Sanders Primetime, NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat 1, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 even made an appearance on the Genesis. Virtua Fighter 2 even made an appearance on the Genesis. But one of my favorite games of all time on the Genesis was Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 2 was the best beat-em-up ever. Ever, 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 ever. And some may say Final Fight, but oh no. Streets of Rage 2 was my favorite beat-em-up all time. Still is my favorite beat-em-up of all time. Toe Jam and Earl, Panic on Funkatron. Huge, 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 huge game to have. I mean, what else do we have? A lot of Disney games were made for the Genesis, also for the Super NES, Game Boy, and Game Gear. But let's talk about the Genesis games, like Aladdin, like Lion King, and they made their Game Gear experiences too. Now, I never had a Game Gear as a kid. One, it was expensive as hell. Two, one of the reasons Sega's Game Gear didn't do that well is even though it was color, the battery life was like 3.5 hours and you were fucked. Whereas a Game Boy lasted literally for days. Okay? And because of that, and because the Game Boy library was so vast, Sega had no chance. They tried, and they did a lot of things well, like the backlit screen, and the fact that it was in color and everything else. So, like the Nintendo and like the Super Nintendo, I never had a Sega Game Gear as a kid. My friend Matt Fabish did, and Matt Fabish let me play it on the bus all the time. He had a couple of Disney games for it. I loved the Game Gear when I played it. I never had one. But like the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, I'm also collecting as well for the Game Gear. I'm collecting all the sports games, the gambling games, the puzzle games, the game show games like Wheel of Fortune, wrestling, any WWF game. That's another series I collect for, not WWE. WWF games and not WCW, only WWF. I mean, what else can we talk? What else? Clay Fighter originated on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, but Clay Fighter's up there. The Genesis, man. Genesis does what Nintendo. That was the advertisement back then. And boy, did Sega give Nintendo a run for its money because it was edgier. I mean, you take a look at the titles. You take a look at some of these titles. Okay, Mike Ditka Power Football, Pac-Mania, Pac-Man 2, NFL Primetime with Deion Sanders. Okay, Tony La Russa Baseball. Toe Jam and Earl, Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racing. I mean, Streets of Rage. These were edgier titles that Nintendo just didn't have until later on when they were literally... So Echo the Dolphin, I completely forgot that that's not really an edgy title. But Echo the Dolphin was a great platformer, hard as fuck, but great platformer for the Sega Genesis. But I mean, when Nintendo saw that their stock was plummeting here, as far as Sega grabbing a whole chunk of the pie, they finally stepped up their game and they allowed blood. I remember when Mortal Kombat came out. I still remember the code for the Genesis, the blood code, ABACABB. You're never gonna forget that code, and you input it. Whereas Sweat was only in Mortal Kombat 1 for the Super Nintendo, but they learned their lesson quick. Then we got to the 32X. Now I wanted a 32X. I wanted a 32X. My friend Yossi actually had a 32X, and he said it sucked. I couldn't imagine why. And really it did. They really didn't do it. There weren't a lot of titles for it. It was an add-on for the Sega Genesis to compete with Sony's FX chip, or excuse me, with Nintendo's FX chip for the Super Nintendo. So you had some 32X games, and you had some. So then Sega CD came out to try to enhance everything, and then it was a whole contraption. You can see it on a million different YouTubers' channels. This contraption was something out of like a Chinese puzzle box. I mean, you couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And there's some Dragon's Lair got released for the Sega CD. There was an Echo the Dolphin. There was a Sonic game, Sonic CD that was released. By the way, Sonic CD is still to this day is held in high regard as one of the best Sonic titles of all time. So then we go right into the Saturn. Now again, Saturn came out. I couldn't wait. I was a huge Sega fan, still am to this day. Even though Game Boys are my #1 favorite system, again, Sega has a huge place in my heart because it was my first real console. I mean, Game Boy's real console was a handheld. A home console, this was my first real one. So I was Sega all the way. And a lot of games that I wanted to play would not come out on the Super Nintendo. So I picked up a Saturn. I had a ton of games, like Virtua Fighter was gigantic. Fighters Megamix, Fighting Vipers, Daytona USA, House of the Dead. I mean, Virtua Fighter Kids, Virtua Racing. World Series Baseball moved from the Genesis to the Saturn, so graphically it was a hell of a lot better. Games like NHL All-Star Hockey, Virtua Cop. I mean, and Virtua Cop 2. Great games. Sega Saturn had great games. It just, against Sony, it stood no chance. And then, when Sega knew the writing was on the wall, they tried to get a jump start on Sony. So they released the Sega Dreamcast. Sega Dreamcast, awesome system. To this day, my favorite Sega system ever. Genesis is #2, Saturn #3. And I'm not talking about the Game Gear, but Sega Dreamcast, NFL 2K originated, NBA 2K originated on the Dreamcast first. Games like Power Stone, games like House of the Dead 2, and Gauntlet Legends, even though it was a multi-platform. Crazy Taxi was only a Dreamcast release at the time. I mean, just awesome, awesome, awesome games. Shenmue, Soul Calibur. You know, there was a 128-bit system of raw power. Games are great. Sonic Adventure. I keep forgetting these games. I mean, Sonic Adventure was an influential Sonic game. Great, 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 great game. But, alas, Sega screwed up. The PS2 was more powerful. And Sega was not so much more powerful. It was the fact that Sega had screwed up so badly with the Saturn and the 32X, the developers didn't trust them a lot anymore. And so then when Sony came out with the PS2, they're like, screw this. We're going to go right to Sony again. And that's what ended up doing the Dreamcast. But I'm a Sega fanboy, always will be. On the Sega Nintendo fanboy argument, it's Sega for me. Sega all the way. I just loved it, man. I love Sega. Nintendo. And the funny thing is, Game Boy is really my favorite Nintendo system of all time. And yes, I'm collecting for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. And yeah, Super Nintendo had great, great games like Donkey Kong Country and things of that nature. But Nintendo really went by the wayside. It's been Sega and Sony for me for the last 20 years. And Microsoft thrown in between. But that's pretty much the drill, folks. That's my Sega wall. Well, we're almost at the end of the game tour, folks. Game room tour. Game room tour. And this wall is just a plethora of just nonsense. Well, what is it? Well, just like earlier in the game room tour, you saw the mascot wall with Nintendo mascots and Sony and Sega. I'm trying to collect every Disney game that ever came out for every console ever. So, I mean every Disney game. So, I mean, up here you have the original Game Boy games, classics like DuckTales and, you know, Lion King. Although I'm missing Lion King. I need Lion King. It's one of the games I need. Aladdin's on there. And then we go right into the Game Boy Color. They had a ton of stuff. But, you know, yeah, I mean, Game Boy Color had games like Doug's Big Game. I mean, I'm collecting everything. Game Boy Advance, Cheetah Girls, Cinderella, whatever, Disney Princess, Kim Possible. So, the Game Boy Advance, in my opinion, is what started the shovelware. I'm going to call it the shovelware saga. And what does shovelware mean? Well, shovelware is just a lot of garbage that really cost 8 cents, really. You're getting 8 cents worth of value, but they charge you $50. And they're releasing games just to say, oh, look, I have 1 million games released for my console, but 900,000 of those million are games like Barney Hide and Seek, or, you know, darts, or bicycle racing. I mean, stuff like that. So, yeah, they tried to make, back in the early 2000s, they tried to cash in on a lot of stuff. Cheetah Girls, Kim Possible, Lion King 1.5, they made a game based on that direct-to-DVD movie. Disney's Party, Donald Duck Awesome. I mean, stuff like that. But really, where it started was Nintendo DS. Nintendo DS, excuse me, not where it started, where it really hit the mark was on the Nintendo DS. I mean, everything in their mother is released for the Nintendo DS. Games like Big Hero 6, Disney's Camp Rock The Final Jam, A Christmas Carol, G-Force, Disney Princess Enchanting Storyboards, Disney's Cory in the House. I mean, Disney's Jonas Brothers. I mean, they tried to cash in on everything. And they're charging $40 for a brand new game. You're telling me that, yeah, some woman out there or some guy out there for his daughters probably spent $40 to pick up Disney's Jonas, but probably has about 5 hours of gameplay, period. Okay? $40 for Disney's Jonas. Games like Wizards of Waverly Place, Sunny with a Chance, The Sweet Life featuring Zack and Cody. I mean, really? But yes, I have to. I'm never going to play this shit. Maybe one day when I'm 100 years old, I'll play it just to see what the hell's going on. But I'm trying to collect every Disney game ever that got released for every system. Now, there's an exception. What's the exception? If a game came out for multiple systems, like it was a cross-platform game, like if it came out for Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube, then obviously I'm not going to collect it for all three. I only have to collect it for one. The difference is when we get to the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, there were different versions of some of the games. And because I don't know which versions are different, all of them, and I want to be 100% sure, I will be collecting the same games for every, for the Genesis and for the Super Nintendo, but that's the only exception. So, you know, games, great games, like we talked about this earlier. It's Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse for the Genesis. Ariel and the Little Mermaid for the Genesis. Aladdin, Lion King, Mickey Mania, Tailspin, World of Illusion. I even have Mickey Safari and Letterland for the original Nintendo. And then we get to the Super Nintendo exclusive Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games. Games like Mickey Speedway USA came out for the Game Boy Color, also came out for the N64. Disney's Tigger's Honey Hunt. And I also have the Game Gear and Sega CD versions of these games. A ton of PS2 stuff, a ton of Wii stuff. Wii is another system of shovelware. 3 great games. Ultimate Darts. 500 or 50 wacky winter games, 50 wacky summer games, and you're paying $50 for that shit. But yeah, there they are. Kingdom Hearts obviously is all down here because it is a Disney game. But what can I say? I'm almost done for the PS1. I think I'm done actually for the PS1. I may be missing 1 or 2. I'm pretty much almost done. The only games I may be missing are for the Nintendo DS, the Game Boy Advance, and maybe a few for the Game Boy Color, and maybe PS3, but that'll be about it. because I pretty much have everything else. And I'm also trying to collect the Tiger handhelds. Every Tiger handheld Disney game I'm also collecting. Every downloadable game for like it's downloadable only, like DuckTales just got released again, or Disney's After School Special or Disney's After School whatever got released for the PS4 as a digital download. So you can download that from the PS Store. Stuff like that. So that's pretty much the Disney wall. And like I said, what you see here is just step one. Step two will be happening, where a lot of stuff will be moved. That other room will be created, and I'll have a retro room, and I will have a current gen room. And that next door will probably be the current gen room. Here will be the retro room, because all my retro stuff's already set up and is all over, like the Game Boy wall and everything else. That's pretty much it. Every Disney game ever. Wow. So just when I thought I was done collecting, I thought again. This is going to be the most convoluted explanation that you will ever hear. And I will do the best I can to explain how this works. But here's the deal. There are certain games that I have where they came out after the movies. There are certain movies I have that games came out after they were released. So what I have to do is I literally have to collect every TV show that came out, or every movie that came out, for the actual games themselves. So for example, if I had Batman for the original Game Boy, I now need to collect every Batman game that ever was, and I also have to collect all the movies and TV shows of Batman. If I have to collect, the Alien movies came out, and then the Alien video games were made after the Alien movies. Now, I already had the Alien movies, so now I have to collect all the Alien games, because I already had the movies. So now I also have to collect the Alien games. Same thing when it comes to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Well, I happened to get Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the PS2 for some reason. I don't know, I was there. I had it. I don't know where it came from. So now I have to collect the entire TV show. I have to collect every other Buffy the Vampire Slayer game that ever came out. Blade, Bourne Identity, or Bourne Trilogy type stuff. Battleship. I collected the Battleship games because of the Battleship movie. Even though the Battleship movie has nothing to do with the actual game. I still have to collect it. Casper. Had Casper for the original Game Boy. Picked that up brand new for like $15 sealed. So what do I have to do now? I have to collect every Casper game that ever came out. Every Casper movie that ever came out. Clue. I had Clue as a movie. It's a board game. I have to collect the board games anyway, so now I have to buy Clue the movie. Constantine. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Die Hard. Fast and the Furious. Fifth Element. The PS2 was great. I talked about the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Color really cashing in on crap. Well, Sony did the same thing with the PS2 and really... To the GameCube, to some extent with Nintendo, but a lot of these titles weren't released on either the Xbox or the GameCube. They were released on Sony's PS2. Games like Fast and the Furious. Games like The Fifth Element. Games like Fight Club. They based on the movies that I already have, so I have to collect the games. Fist of the North Star, now that's going to suck, because Fist of the North Star I had in my original Game Boy collection when I was a kid. So now that I have Fist of the North Star, I now have to collect all the anime. I have to. Am I ever going to watch this? Absolutely not. But I have to collect it. Why? Because I have OCD. When you have OCD, OCD rules your life. And for those of you who don't have OCD, you may think to yourself, oh, well, it's just easy. Don't do it. You don't understand. You don't understand. You don't understand. It's a sickness, and your brain will explode if it doesn't go the way it has to go. It also leads into superstition. Because if something doesn't happen the way it has to happen, then therefore my day will suck in, or I'll get killed, I'll get hit by a bus, whatever the case may be. I'm bringing it to an extreme, but you get the idea behind it. So I have to do it. I have to do it. And at some point I'll be excited as hell because this entire section will be in that other room. It'll be a lot neater than it is that you see here. Napoleon Dynamite. Well, I had the movie, hilarious movie. They came out with a game exclusive for the PlayStation Portable. You had to pick that up. I happen to have Snoopy's Magic Show for the original Game Boy. So what do I have to do now? It's part of the Peanuts universe. I have to collect every Peanuts TV show, movie, cartoon, whatever, and every Peanuts game. Like Snoopy vs. the Red Baron, which I had no issue. I'm never going to play this thing for the PS2. But what did I have to do when it came out for the PS4? I had to buy it. Predator, Rambo, Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy. I have no interest in watching the cartoon. I picked up these two games for the original Game Boy. If you heard a sneeze, when he sneezed. I had to pick those up. Rocky, RoboCop, The Shield. The Shield. I had no intention of ever buying the TV series. I had already seen it. Because I had the game for the PS2, I then have to go out and buy the series. Because that's how life is. Scorpion King, Scarface, every Silent Hill game, every Simpsons game ever. So I'm still a few short on the Game Gear, I think. And then the original Nintendo. Bard vs. Juggernauts, I'm not paying $200 right now for a completed box copy of that. They can go fuck themselves. Spider-Man. God. Star Wars. Star Trek. The list goes on and on and on. And Street Fighter, Terminator, Turtles. Turtles games I'm not actually mad that I have to collect, as well as the TV show, because some of these shows I saw as a kid. And I'd love to be able to go back and try to watch them in chronological order. Because back then, don't forget, you're a kid. If you missed it, you missed it. With somebody like me with OCD, would always get pissed off because they didn't know what they're missing. But there was no way you could go back in time and see that show. And your life was so busy when you were a kid, you had no idea what the hell was going on. You didn't know. So now, with technology, with the way it is, with Netflix, with everything else, I can go back and pick up all these TV shows that I missed as a kid and see every episode. G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe's a series, and there's a ton of series after the original. That's a series I'd love to go back and watch. Godzilla. Oh my god, you know how many Godzilla movies I gotta fucking buy now? Godzilla, for, Japanese Godzilla movies and shit. That's what I gotta do. Jurassic Park. Okay? Ton of Jurassic Park games. Indiana Jones, ton of those. And some of these games, and here's how they get you. If you're a fan of the series, they sometimes make exclusive games for the systems that have an exclusive story that fit into some way of canon of the universe. So, for example, you gotta play Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings, and I don't know if I'm getting the backstory correct, and probably you will, but you'll get my idea. And it takes, whatever takes place there actually took place between the second and the third movie. So I gotta play that because now I'll have a bigger picture, the more full of a picture of the Indiana Jones mythology, as an example. What else? Tiny Toon Adventures. Okay, Looney Tunes. Land Before Time. I remember seeing the first Land Before Time movie, and I loved it. And a million other movies came out, I had no idea. So I gotta collect all the movies anyway, because those are movies eventually I'm gonna watch, but what do I have to do? Oh, the shit, they made video games? Gotta go get those. Looney Tunes, Power Rangers, Men in Black, The Mummy, The Matrix, Popeye. You know what's gonna suck? Is having to go and find every Popeye TV show there ever was. You had the original, you had the movie with Robin, I think it was Robin Williams as Popeye. No, it was somebody. Was it Robin Williams? I don't know who the hell it was. But somebody was in that Popeye movie. I gotta grab that. Might have been Jack Nicholson. It was one of the two. I gotta pick Popeye up. I gotta pick all the cartoons of Popeye up. I gotta pick all this shit up. Xena, Hercules, what else? Tom and Jerry. Ugh. Tom and Jerry will be cool because back then Tom and Jerry were actually a real show. Now it's, so from what I've heard, Tom and Jerry are best pals, and they go and sing Kumbaya with rainbows and unicorns and other crap. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not Tom and Jerry. Call it something else. Tom and Jerry is classic. You're going to throw Tom and Jerry, and they're all sitting there eating birthday cake together, blowing out candles and playing Hide the Pickle. What are we fucking doing? But that's another conversation for another time. Young Indiana Jones, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Top Gun. I mean, the list goes on and on. But guys, this is the game room. This is it. This is video number 1, and very soon I will be doing a video part 2. I will be showing you where everything is. It's not going to be as in-depth as this is because in the next 2 months I don't think I'm going to have a lot to go over. But I'll just show you where everything is again. But this is pretty much it, man. This is the game room tour. Here's the deal. For those of you who have sat through this long, I'm going to throw a secret code in there. If you email me at andyvhb@aol.com, the secret code is Winnie. If you throw Winnie in an email and send it to me in the body of the email, not the header. Say secret code in the header, body of the email, put Winnie. Give me your address and give me your real name and YouTube name, and I'll put you in a drawing to win a system of your choice. Any system that's out now. Okay, but that's pretty much it. And here's the thing, guys, the guidelines I collect for, again, when it comes to Game Boy, any original Game Boy game complete that I can find for $25 or less, I'll buy. Any game that I need, any original sports game, puzzle game, word game, Disney game, any game show game, any original sports game for the Nintendo, you know, even if it doesn't have the licenses, is okay. Super Nintendo and Genesis, I only collect exclusives, and I collect licensed sports games as well. Saturn, the same rules apply. And then when it comes to this, any game that came out that I have the movie of, or TV show of, I have to then collect. And any game that I own that had a TV show that was based on it or after it, or movie based on or after it, I have to collect. And that's pretty much where we're at. So I appreciate all you guys watching this. Appreciate Mike Nappy editing this video with me, teaching me how to do this. And stay tuned for some exciting stuff to the channel. We're bringing this to another level. The football shows that you all love so much, you're going to see a big difference in those. And videos from here on out. So guys, thanks for watching. This has been the Andy VHB Game Tour. When he just woke up, I gotta go.